So, in case you haven't heard, there was recently a big new announcement regarding Lost Skies. With the great progress being made in the development of Lost Skies' latest build, the devs at Bossa Games have gone ahead and announced their planned release for Lost Skies' completely free Island Creator on December 13th of this year. Now, to clear up any misconceptions regarding the release and its purpose to newer people, the Island Creator for Lost Skies functions as a separate yet integral part from the main game. Since in the development of Lost Skies, we know that much of the islands that will comprise the game will be made by the players, we're finally reaching a point where the general public will have complete access to the creator tools to build the islands of their dreams. Now, in relation to this, some people have been asking a lot about whether this means we can expect a close release for the game, as well as what exactly the Island Creator will entail in terms of player control. But as to the end of release dates, while this is an exciting development for the progress of the game, if you ask me personally, I would say that we definitely are not yet close to a release by any means, since based on the trickles of information shared by the devs within the Lost Skies public Discord, it seems that it is very much implied the state of Lost Skies still seems to be in an early alpha to alpha phase, and that there still has yet to be any announced planned release date, in which I think it's fair to say that they still have quite a ways to go in terms of game development. But in spite of that, seeing how for the longest time the newest shared public info on the Lost Skies Island Creator will now actually be getting released, I think this will only create a greater benefit for both the community and the devs' development. Since we are still in such an early stage, nearly anyone with access to Steam will be able to playtest and build all sorts of islands in nearly any configuration that they desire. However, I think they do mention that they don't have access for Mac users or Linux users yet. So far, I think it's just Windows temporarily. But to the end of what players will be able to do within the Island Creator and what future planned editions will look like, there actually is a publicly shared Island Creator trailer posted on Steam, which I'll have linked below for you all to take a look at, which covers a great extent of optional control that you will have in the island design. Consequently, I'm sure many of the former Worlds Adrift players out there might recognize that many of the menu options look very reminiscent of the previous Island Creator, so it'll definitely be more intuitive in that respect. But through this awesome trailer, we get to see some great demonstrations of island design options when it comes to every single aspect of painted textures, terrain modification, and even object placements, where we get a full range of ability to build beautiful lush forests, stunning vistas, and foreboding caves full of dense fog and ruins, and different challenging obstacles like enemy turrets, drones, and loot-filled puzzles. While there's little else as to the direct specifics shared on their Steam page, based on many of the videos on the Skywatches, we know there will be a ton of control over direct puzzle unlocks, door activations, and so much more, allowing you as the designer to have creative control over pathings for multiple unlock conditions, possibly allowing you to build multi-step puzzles. And with this newly designed data pads that we've had mentioned, possibly even write your own stories of the people who came before, or write out hints leading to the solution of your puzzle, however rewarding it may be. Now, while it isn't yet mentioned on Steam, we did get a bunch of chats back from the Bossa designers, as well as Luke himself, who mentioned in response to someone that you will have access to a gun and glider to mess around with in the Island Creator when actually designing your island, where in further talks regarding Lost Skies as a whole, he mentions that the structure of island layout will have a quote default world, which has a layout and island composition made by the devs themselves and from islands that they handpicked from the community. Luke also mentions that in the future there will be a tool that allows you to decide a world's layout and what islands appear, meaning if you wanted to, you could just flat out ignore all of their approved lists and include literally anything that you want. And that as more islands are made, more regions and cultures will expand further as they continue to work on the game, which I think is going to be such a great development as well. Giving the community this tool will allow devs to gain access to a much larger sampling size of people who will be working on their own islands, which consequently allows them to more easily find repeated bugs that are discovered as they work on the game in real time. In addition to this, they also mentioned that their announcement on the Discord, they plan to have events centered around our creations, but that we will get to hear more about that in the coming weeks, where I'd imagine they have some sort of competitions as to who can build the best islands, possibly around specific themes, where I know personally I definitely plan to work on some future videos covering some of the coolest islands made by the community and possibly live stream their exploration and even island work of my own. But Aside from all this awesome stuff, I do want to quickly clear up the changes that some people in the Discord have briefly talked about as well. While it was mentioned in the last Skywatch, I want to reiterate that Lost Skies has been modified to no longer solely be a 6-player co-op, and that as it was mentioned by the devs on both their Discord and Reddit page, they now have moved Lost Skies to the route of just being dedicated self-hosted servers. Now, to this extent, a lot of people hear this statement and mention that there's no player limit and instantly think this means Worlds Adrift is completely coming back. And while it's definitely great news, it's still a very good question as to what the upper limit of that might actually be. Since the majority of these self-hosted servers will be run off the host PC, it's hard to say what will happen for certain once you reach the range of, say, 50 plus people in one area, since Lost Skies is so heavily physics-based. However, I personally think that since we know there will be dedicated servers, that this leaves room for both modders and people familiar with server hosting and design who could actually make or rent out those servers for their own use to host very large worlds, much similar to what we see with Rust, and that if this is possible, I'm almost 100% certain that players will be doing this. But at the same time, I think the devs have hesitated to say for certain if there's any specific player limit because it's simply too early to tell. While technology has come a long way in the near 5 years since the end of Worlds Adrift, it remains to be seen how well everything can actually be completely optimized. As with much of the newer and newer additions back in Worlds Adrift's MMO, it would only increase the lag due to the spatial OS system that they used. It made it very difficult to add any new creatures to the game when it would just cause heavy server lag and a huge toll on the players. However, at the very least, they have guaranteed complete stability up to 6 players. I feel like where hosting technology is by today's standards, it wouldn't be unreasonable to say that anything even in the realm of maybe 25 people in a server is not an unrealistic standard. So at the very least, I think it's safe to say that there will be at least some leeway in the realm of over 6-player hosted worlds, even for people just hosting with their own PCs. But regardless, only time will tell when it comes to these things. While it's always good to keep up high hopes, I wouldn't want to overpromise anything until we can say for certain. But when or if they actually do release that info, you will definitely be hearing about that the second an actual figure is confirmed from me. So if you want to go and find out more insider info regarding Lost Skies, I highly recommend you join the Discord community and sign up for the open development, which I'll have linked below. As if you are selected from the random pool, you will have the opportunity to play the earliest builds of the actual game, playtest bugs, and directly help the devs in the creation process of the game, and learn about even newer Lost Skies development info even before these videos or any public posts come out. Regardless, I hope you guys have enjoyed and that this gets you also pumped to see where Lost Skies will go in the future, as I personally cannot wait to see what kinds of islands you will all create. Either way, thank you all so much for watching and have a beautiful rest of your day, boys. Peace.